Hi, and welcome back to CVC Interviews. My name is Joyce Vaudreuil from Vernon. Tonight's guest is Jean Luddy, and she's one of the many volunteers at the Vernon Historical Society. I just love this place. It's one of my first stops when we relocated from Massachusetts to Connecticut. Jean, welcome. Thank you so much for coming in tonight.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be invited and to be able to tell you a bit about our mission and what we do at the Vernon Historical Society.
Well, I'm so happy that you brought in a lot of different displays and props, and we will get to each one of them.
Okay.
This board here, I love that you brought this in. This is a great example. Can you just give me a summary of each one of these areas here?
What we wanted to do is have this board tells you the mission about what we do at Vernon Historical Society. First thing is we collect objects and all kinds of things that had to do with people who lived in Vernon or Rockville. It could have been made or used in Vernon or Rockville. Anytime. We have things that go back to the early 1800s, and we're always looking for things from the late 20th century and even the 21st century, because that's history too.
Well, that's interesting. I wouldn't even have thought of that. You always think Historical Society, way.
Yeah.
So you are looking to collect some newer items.
You know, we're always happy to have, some new things. We just got a donation of a sweater and from the 1960s that was worn at Rockville High School. So and that'll be really nice for our Rockville High School exhibit. But some of the things we collect are textiles, toys, books, art, glass, china. We have a fabulous photograph collection. Every day we get pictures in, and they're just outstanding. We also have tools, objects, documents, diaries, newspapers, and people forget that the key word in history is story, and all these things tell a story. So when people bring an object in, we sit down and interview them. Who used it? Where did it come from? What's the story behind it? And sometimes we get just some amazing stories about these objects. And one object by itself is interesting, but if you have an assortment of them that they're kind of together, they give us a bigger picture. We've gotten some things that were used in the Brockville mills, and we have some tools unto themselves, but when you put them all together, you get a good sense of what happened in the mills. Then when you combine that with photographs, and I brought in a book of fabric samples. This was a scrapbook that was put together by Louis Schlaff, who was the superintendent of the Hockenham Mill. His house is on Orchard Street, and this is an example from 1926 showing the kinds of patterns that were made. And this is the kind of things you'd see in fashion right now. Plaids. And
what's old is new again.
Never goes out of style.
Yeah.
And then some of the other things, and you can see here, the little tags that have the individual numbers for that particular pattern. So the types of things that they made in the mills were very, very impressive. And the people that worked in the mills worked hard. They had to learn to master a lot of different kinds of machinery and different techniques. And what they made was wonderful, and certainly should be remembered.
Well, actually, one of the things that I enjoy is the educational piece, and that actually is the next thing we discuss. And working in the mills was the topic of the Mother Jones presentation.
Yes, yes.
I found it fascinating, and she even dressed up in character.
Yeah, she did. Bev York did a wonderful job, and really talked about the conditions in the mills and how it affected the people that worked there. She was especially interested in children and trying to keep children out of the difficult conditions there. Right. In the mills at Rockville, they didn't have too many children. Usually you went to work in the mills after grammar school. That would be like after 8th grade. The young women would help with getting the looms ready, and then the young boys would carry the bobbins and some of the equipment around to the different types of looms. But I also should mention we not only collect things about Rockville, but also Vernon. And Vernon was very different back in the day. It was very rural. So we have a number of tools that came off the farm, and that gives kids and visitors an insight into how people lived.
Well, I would like to, I know you talked about photographs, but this one was rather interesting to me. This is a photograph of Vernon.
Yes, and we had put out a book. Dr. Artis Abbott, our previous museum director, and I collaborated on a book about 20 years ago, and this picture showed up in it, and people were amazed. This was the picture that got the most comment. This is what we old-timers used to call Vernon Circle. But if you go downtown, if you go down to where the exit by the highway is, you have Wooden Tap is here. You have the new ShopRite's going here.
Oh, yeah.
You have, this is Kelly Road going into South Windsor.
Okay.
This is Route 83. This is Route 30. This is what it looked like in 1939. So very, very different. But you can see how the impact of the automobile has completely changed the use and for roads and the types of stores. All the stores moved out of Rockville to become, when Vernon became suburban. There was a big change in what was happening in downtown. Everybody went out to the suburbs.
Well, and speaking of Rockville, another photo you brought that is very interesting.
This is actually a close-up of a photograph we got, was taken in after 1892. And this is the old Rockville High School that is now main office on School Street. And this was the very first school in town on School Street. And you have the two buildings right next to each other. A little farther down is the East School and then St. Bernard's School. So School Street was called Good School Street with good reason.
There you go.
And this building was torn down in the 40s, but that was originally the elementary school. And then a couple of rooms on the top floor became the high school. And this was the cupola, the scene of the famous fighting flag issue in 1877. When I was doing some research, I found out about that. Each class had their own flag, and the class of, they were the seniors of 1877 had a flag, and then the juniors had their flag. Well, one junior thought it would be really cool to put the flag up in the cupola. So they got up in there and they put the flag. Well, the seniors were just very insulted. So they took that flag and went and hid it in a store on Market Street. So there was a lot of running up and down the stairs, grabbing flags, and the teachers finally said, knock it off, and confiscated everything. So high school, in some ways, is not too different in how
It does not
kids,
sound much different.
no, that's it. So
Very, very interesting. So the educational piece, besides the live speakers, you also do some programs with the children.
yes, in fact, we just, in 2018, we just republished Vernon Our Town, which is our children's book. And we got support from the Vernon school system. Dr. Joseph McCary, the superintendent, was very interested in having us republish it. The previous edition came out in 1989, so it was time to bring it into the 21st century.
Yeah, lots changed. Yeah,
And he gave me two fabulous teachers to work with, and we reshaped the text, added a lot of pictures, so that book is now available.
Where do you buy something like that?
You can get that at the Historical Society.
Oh.
So, and it's and we also have original artwork from a number of students. So our cover is a beautiful. Let's see, it's colorful, drawn by one of the kids, and it shows Fox Hill Tower with the flags flying. So we have those kinds of things. We also have school visits and field trips. Last year, students from third grade, that's when they study local histories in third grade. Center Road school kids walked over, and I had a friend help me, and what we did was we presented information about contrast between what if you grew up in Vernon and if you grew up in Rockville before the start of the 20th century, what kinds of tools would you use? So one of the tools I showed them was this object, and it's very interesting. Kids are very intuitive. So they looked at it and they figured out, okay, you pick up something with it. So their first thought was maybe something hot like coal or fire or wood. But then I kind of guided them with questions, and then we discussed that we figured out that actually this was what you picked up ice with. And then we talked about the Iceman and ice boxes, and where do you get the ice from? And then it led to the story that Snipsick Lake, they used to harvest the ice and then pack it in the special ice house, and then they would sell it to everybody over the summer. So if sometimes people's grandparents talk about the ice box, well, that's what this meant. So this tool was able to tell a story and help the kids understand how people lived back in the day. But it was kind of interesting. I had a couple of other things. I usually don't let them touch things, but we had a donation of a typewriter, probably about the 1950s. It was a manual typewriter, and a avocado green phone from the 1970s. So we let them touch everything, and they loved the typewriter, but they were too fast, and the whole
The
thing
keys kept jamming.
Yeah, but
yeah.
they liked that. They loved the phone.
If they typed the way we were taught to,
Yeah.
they wouldn't be that fast.
No, but they're like, shh. Then with the phone, they didn't quite know what to do with the dial. Do I take my finger out? Do I lift it up? What do I do? And then I also had a little box camera, and they could see how they open and close the aperture to take the picture. But the point I wanted to make is all three of those things are all in your phone now. Those three tools have all been melded into the ubiquitous cell phone. So,
Love it.
but they had a good time, and yes, it was a nice experience.
So the last section I want to talk about, but not the last thing we talk about,
Yes.
is the preservation piece.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of times, we get these things and they're very fragile, or they just need to be given a little extra
Well, this
care.
made me nervous handling this book.
Yeah,
here.
it's like, paper, we have, paper and fabric, they need special care. So we have special procedures in the museum, and I have to give a special shout out to my predecessor, Dr. Artis Abbott, who brought in the understanding of these kinds of techniques, using acid-free paper to wrap textiles in, putting them in acid-free boxes, temperature controlled in the lower level of the museum. All of our papers are wrapped in acid-free paper. The photographs are interleaved with acid-free paper, and they're stored in a particular way. So this is part of the whole preservation aspect. We have special tissue that's acid-free to mend things with, cleaning pads. Sometimes we get framed items in, and you should never frame anything on wood as a wood backing, because it just starts, the wood bleed, you can see the impression of the wood on the back of the photograph. So we disassemble them and then wrap them in acid-free paper. So there's a lot of different strategies and techniques, and Dr. Abbott went out and learned how to do it and came back and taught us. So we are able to put these into practice. But, people entrust us with these items. We want to make sure we take good care of them.
You guys do a lot there.
We're busy, yes.
One of the things I learned a little bit about when I relocated to the area is the Vernon Rockville. Some people say they live in Vernon, some say Vernon Rockville. Oh no, I just live in Rockville. So what town do you live? What town is it located in?
It's interesting. This is sort of a remnant of the Industrial Revolution. Before the Industrial Revolution, towns like Vernon and Coventry were all rural. But with the advent of the Industrial Revolution at the start of the 1800s, a lot of sections of towns that had water power began to build up, and you have sections within sections, kind of like the hole in the donut kind of thing. And somebody did a study, and if in Connecticut, if you see a town or a section of town with the word "ville" at the end, that means it's probably industrial. Hazardville, Thompsonville, Rockville. It's a good clue that was probably an industrial section within a larger town.
And a fast-moving river, too.
Yes, yeah,
they
water
use
power.
Water power.
And what was really great about Rockville was that if you start at Slipstick Lake and you go all the way down to West Street, there was a series of waterfalls, and the water drops about 265 feet. So at its height, there were 12 textile factories along the river in Rockville, and to get along the river was a very important thing to be able to have your water power.
Now, do you work with, there are some folks in town that are trying to preserve and renovate buildings. Do you work on that scale? Do you work with the owners of those properties?
We have resources that they can use. The Historic Properties Commission is also a good place for people who want to come and figure out how to rehabilitate a building. Bob Hurd is the chairman. He's a practicing architect, so he is a great resource as well. So we are kind of in the advisory position to help people.
Oh, very good. What about that bell in the front yard? What can you tell me about that?
Okay, that's a great story. That bell originally was on the steeple of what was first called the Methodist Episcopal Church, but was the senior center until recently. When the building was originally built, it had two very nice sort of open steeples, more like a column rather than the traditional New England steeple. Oh. And one of them had the bell in there. And at one point in the 1890s, that bell was used as a fire bell as well, because it was right downtown, and there was a fire station behind Town Hall, the memorial building. But by the 1960s, the building the towers were damaged in the hurricane of '38. So by the 1960s, the church had moved out to its present location, and they didn't really need the bell. So they offered to build the Rockville High School. And Rockville High School had it on their property for about 30 years. And what they did was they would ring the bell when when the football team scored. So it was a nice thing. After a while, though, they had to put it under like a little roof and put kind of a fence around it because it became an attractive to rival teams. So the high school thought, well, they ended up offering it to us, and so we have mounted it. And in fact, a bell expert came and said recently, don't ring it anymore because it's got a crack in it. But the high school came up, they wanted a spirit bell, so they have since gotten a bell that's on fairly small that they can put on a platform with wheels, so they can wheel it out and then bring it back into the building. And it's painted blue, and it's really nice, and I think that the kids enjoy ringing it when they score.
Well,
so
of course.
it's got a nice, so the big bell begat a little bell. So
You do collect a lot of different things then.
yes, we do. And the main stipulation is it has to have been used or made by people in Vernon and Rockville. So, because
Well, that
somebody's,
can be kind of broad.
Yes, it can, but
So one of the things that interests me were the different ways you do fundraising.
yes.
I'm actually a book lover myself, and it stood out to me that once a year you folks have a book sale.
Yes.
When do you usually do that?
It's usually the last weekend in April and then the first weekend in May. And we've been doing this, I think, almost 20 years. And it's our big fundraiser, and it's a lot of work, but we have a great group of volunteers who work really hard and sort the books. And our goal is to have the books sorted by subject area and then by author's last name. So people come in, they're looking for a particular author, they go. I have to say that this year we have way more books than we thought we were going to get. So we're telling everybody, hold on to your books and call us after April 1st. We might be, we have to kind of go through some of the stuff. And yeah.
Is there any type of book in particular you're looking to collect for the sale?
For the sale,
People
tend to come in and they usually want popular fiction, mysteries, history is very popular, trying to think, children's books, those kinds of things. We have a night, the book sale preview night is the Thursday before the last weekend in April. And that's the only night we charge. But if you want to come in for the preview, it's $10, but then you can get first look at everything. But the rest of the time, it's open, it's free. But we have a number of people that come back year after year.
Yeah, I go every year.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with, first it was organized by subject, and there were huge signs. You could clearly see. You could see there were different rooms for different subjects. I personally got the historical books. That's what I was looking for. And biographies, love them. Mm-hmm. I was impressed that it was sorted by author. I couldn't believe a sale of this magnitude was being held, and it was so well organized. And you had people everywhere to help find things. People at the at checkout were very nice. They would look at a book and say, "I didn't see this. I want." So it was it was communal and very reasonably priced. I mean, you can't really beat it. It was a great way to support the town, the services that you folks offer. I really liked it. Can anybody my husband and I happened to go there one day when it was open, and we were downstairs, and you had this huge photo display. Mm-hmm, Is that something that's up all the time or changes?
It's going to change. Right now, the photo display are pictures that were used in the new edition of Vernon, Our Town, that were not used in the other one. And in the book itself, the captions are fairly short, but we thought it would be fun to put lengthier captions for the adult visitors that come in. So that's up, but I think sometime over the summer, actually, but it'll be before the next meeting, we're going to put up a display about Rockville High School, which is celebrating its 150th anniversary this year.
Wow.
So that display will be upstairs, but then later on it'll come downstairs into the museum area. So.
And people can go onto the webpage.
Yes.
Is it vhs.org?
Yes, I should. Let's see. It's I should know this. Vernon Historical Society.org.
Oh.
So we have a website, and we also have a Facebook page. So we're moving into the 21st century. So, and at the book sale, we're getting hip. We're going to have one of those little square things that you can attach to a tablet so that people can use charge cards. We had never done that before.
Oh, yeah. The thing you stick on the phone.
Yeah. So we're
Foursquare, I think it's called.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So we're going to learn that. So it's hard. You have one foot in the past, but you need to have a foot in the future too.
Yes,
So,
you do. It sounds like there's a good balance there. What are some of your favorite speakers that you've had?
oh, okay. Well, John Rowe, of course, we just had him. He's excellent. Bev York has come and spoken a number of times. We had Don Sarakowski do a talk on the railroad in Vernon Depot, jam-packed. You know, a lot of people like the train stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that. My husband and I went out to the Train and Trolley Museum also,
Okay.
so a little further upstate, but oh, I'm sorry I missed that.
And then Connie Satin came and did several talks about the Civil War. She did those. Those were wonderful. So yeah, we've had some really very dynamic and interesting and passionate speakers.
I'm really impressed with the number of people in these two towns or one town. Between your organization and the Civil War Museum, very informative. I was very happy to see that you coexist separately, yet you do some things together sometimes. We have some of the speakers there.
Yes, yeah, in fact, during the 150th anniversary of the Civil War, we did some collaboration with the Civil War place. And they've come over and they've talked to us about how to organize their collection, so we were able to share some of our practices with them. When we did an exhibit on World War I, they let us borrow 2 pieces of World War I uniform, which for our exhibit, which was very kind of them. So it's been nice. And then we have a relationship with Strong Family Farm, you know, and we've done some collaborative things. I think at some point we'd love to do a square dance, you know, with them. Because the upstairs of the building used to be the old Grange building. And the Grange was like a farmers organization, social and political. And so the upstairs has a little stage where they would have different performances. But the Grange was known for its square dancing. And for a lot of families, a lot of kids in Vernon in the 40s and 50s, there wasn't a whole lot of things to do, but you could go to the Grange, and some people met their future wives or husbands at a Grange dance. So that upstairs meeting hall has a lot of stories. In fact, the floor has to be replaced at some point because it's gotten so worn down from all the years of dancing.
Oh, that's some of the charm of it, though.
That's right.
I like that. So, we actually had to learn square dancing in gym class a long time ago. I guess it was the only way to get the boys and girls to interact at that point.
Well, it's nice because they tell you what to do. So
That's true. That's true. Yeah, the Strong Family Farm. They're also 1 foot in the past, 1 in the future.
Yes.
They've evolved and changed, and they're right across the street from you practically.
well, that's it. And Norman Strong was a great resource. You know, that's Nancy Strong's father. If we had a question, we'd call him up, and sometimes he'd drive over in his tractor and answer our question. And Geraldine, his wife, was a great resource as well. In fact, it was through the efforts of Dr. Abbott and Geraldine Strong that we found a home at the Grange. Our first home was up on Prospect Street in Rockville in a sort of a wing of a building, but when the building was sold, then we ended up going into storage at, it's Vernon Elementary, but it's now Center 375, so we were in a little tiny place. Well, artists got together with Geraldine, and the Grange needed a tenant, and we needed a place, so it was...
Marriage made in heaven.
That's right, and we've been there since 1986, and it's worked out really well. The Grange still has use of the building, so that works out well, and we are able to have our collection and our exhibit space are on the first floor, and then the meeting hall is upstairs, so it's worked out really well.
Yeah, that's where the book sale is.
Exactly, yes.
And you guys keep up those signs all year long.
Yes, well, once you get them up there, they're hard to get down.
They are, but you know, it just made me look forward to the book sale even more because I was at the Mother Jones presentation.
Right, yes.
Yeah, she did a lot with, she did pictures, images, storytelling. She was reading from Mother Jones' diary. So it really made it, I don't want to say, personal, I guess. It wasn't just like reading from a dry book.
Well, that's it. If you can bring in what we call primary sources, things like photographs, diaries, newspapers, things of the time, then you have a better connection to what happened. But then by coming in costume, as she did, and then as John Rowe did recently, it just kind of makes it fun.
So what are some of the things people can do to help you folks out, whether it's you're collecting things, but what other type of fundraisers do you do?
Come to the book sale, buy books. We also have a holiday craft fair at the last weekend in November.
Oh.
And it's a little different than a lot of craft fairs. Crafters will, I think it's $5 for a spot, And they don't have to stay there. What they do is they tag their items with their crafter number and the price. Then they can go and work another craft fair, and then when everything's all set up and our volunteers make it look like a Christmas wonderland. Anyway, so when you bring your item up to pay for it, they write down the crafter number and the item and the price. We keep 20%,
Brilliant.
they get the rest.
That is brilliant.
And we have some great crafters, and we also have nearly new items, which is kind of our little mini tag sale, but it works out really well. And people get it, with everybody downsizing, it kind of works for us, so we appreciate that, people's donations.
There seems to be a new wave of, they call them the millennials, but they seem to appreciate older items and, reducing waste. So by reusing something, there's a whole other thing. So is there anything else you want to talk about that we didn't touch on yet?
No, I think I just have to really say that we have a wonderful group of volunteers.
Yes, you do.
People comment. We have researchers that help us with different kinds of projects downstairs. The book sale people are working all the time, the craft fair people. And some of the groups are the same, some mix it up. But it's a really nice group, and we have a pizza party once a year where we invite everybody who's helped. And it's a great, because you don't always see everybody, but you see them at the party. So it's very communal. And we're always looking for new people because, some of us are getting older, so it's nice to bring in some new blood.
Yes, it's tough people working 1 and 2 jobs, so it can be difficult, but you guys do so many different things. So thank you so much for coming in. I'm so glad to meet you. I've visited there so many times, so it's nice to have a glimpse behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'll see you at the book sale.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Well, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us. Here at CVC, we also count on volunteers. And if you would like to not just watch TV, but make TV, then come on down, join us at one of our workshops. Go to our webpage, cvctv.org, or visit the Vernon Historical Society to learn more. So thank you again for joining us. We'll see you soon. Good night.